Now, of course, I don't stop being a gay man when Pride season is over. Part of my identity and my world throughout the year, as it is for all members of the LGBTQ+ community. And I think one of the clearest messages to brands is exactly that we're here all year and we want to hear from you and be represented by you all year. The term queer has had some strongly negative connotations over the years, but more recently we've really started to reclaim it. And there are many in our community who find it to be the perfect expression of their gender and sexual identity. And to an extent, it's also expanded into being a term to describe the community in its entirety. Now, by definition, that LGBTQ+ spectrum is a broad house. People can have very different experiences within it. Being a gay man doesn't really prepare me for fully understanding what it's like to be a trans or non-binary person. But we do all share a common outsider perspective, a joint sense of community and spirit, and an aligned desire to make things better. And like any broad family, whilst there are many things we don't all agree on, we do all agree on that equality and freedom for all only comes from celebrating and championing that full spectrum of diversity. We like to think of the world making constant progress towards progressive ideals and equality, but increasingly that isn't the case. In Poland, in the US, and of course in countless countries where LGBT rights are greatly diminished, things seem to be going in the wrong direction. Here in the UK, a coordinated lobby against our trans brothers and sisters is edging closer to undoing years of gradual progress, making it practically and legally harder to be a trans person in this country. Companies have a huge role to stand up for and advocate for these communities, and a massive shout out to my old Rainbow Network team at Diageo, who I know recently ran a trans inclusion training with Stonewall for over 500 members of their global team, alongside rolling out incredible new inclusive policies. Those steps make a real impact. Now, each of our personal experiences is just one very small and often privileged slice of LGBT+ life. But I'm excited to be joined now by Joanne Oatts, fantastically talented creative director. And
thank you, Jerry. That's great. I'm really excited to be joined by this panel by a wonderful, wonderful team of people. But yes, this panel's called I'm Here and I'm Queer. It should be called I'm Here and I'm Queer and I'm Here all year. But we will go on to talk about what brands can do all year round, not just in Pride Month. So on the panel, we'll have Chris and Polly and Deborah, who are all joining now. Fantastic to see you guys. I'm going to go through in turn if you'd like to introduce yourself. Chris.
Hiya, I'm Chris Kenna, the CEO of Brand Advance. You can see half of them here. We've turned this, there's no Eurovision this year, so this is our Eurovision, dominoes and stuff behind us. But yeah, we help brands and agencies to reach everyone, really.
Thanks, Chris. Great posse you've got there behind you. Polly, would you like to go next?
Brilliant. Hi, I'm Polly Shute. I'm a consultant in the charity and not-for-profit sector. I used to be on the board of Pride for about 4 or 5 years. And alongside my day job, my gay job, I do some consultancy with Diva magazine, which is Europe's biggest LGBTQI magazine for women.
And Deborah, hi.
Partner at Mindshare, a media agency, and I'm also the chair for Roots, which is our diversity and inclusion committee, and I've recently been appointed chair for our collective, which is all about inclusivity across intersectionality.
Thanks, Deborah. So we've seen some great examples today of inclusive advertising, some great Pride advertising. But, you know, inclusive advertising should be for life and not just for Pride Month, which is obviously something we advocate for at Outvertising. So what happens the rest of the year? And the question I have for each of the panels that we can go through is, you know, let's look at some positive things that are happening. Are there brands out there that are doing things all year round? And what are they doing and how are they going about it? Chris, have you got any thoughts about brands you can think of?
Well, yeah, it's become commercial imperative now. It's sort of don't do it and die, quite literally. You know, COVID, Black Lives Matter, what's going on in Poland and other Eastern European countries has just made firstly made consumers say, you know, what brands am I buying? Where am I putting my money? Actually, I can do without any brand because I got told to stay in my house and not go to anywhere, you know. And so as the consumer mindset has changed, then so do the brands that are trying to reach them consumers. So, you know, I don't want to take any wind out of Deborah's sails, so, but Unilever being one. But then also, you know, L'Oreal and Diageo. And I think rather than pointing out some brands, every brand now is asking, can I do better?
Yeah.
Brand. You know, if I had to find me a brand that's not, obviously, you know, they've had 38 years to catch up with, in my mind, you know. So it's behind, you know, there should be, not every time you have a campaign, every time you're trying to reach consumers, you should always be trying to reach the LGBT version of your consumer in a contextual environment, in media that they consume, you know. But and we're not there yet across the board, but you know, we're working on it. I've got a team behind me that work on it every day. We work with Deborah on here, Polly. We work with Polly's publication, Diva, and the team over there to make sure that, you know, we are, like you said, and I think Jerry said as well, you know, I'm black and I'm gay all year round, you know, not just a Black History Month or a Pride Month or other Pride Month on the other side of the pond, you know. And I'm a consumer and I have money and I want to feel that I'm putting my money into a brand that represents me, that has respect for me, etc. So yeah, I'm a talker as well, and I know limited time for me.
That's okay, Chris. It's all valuable stuff. Deborah, can I come to you next?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the kind of biggest examples are actually from Unilever, and on Ben & Jerry's specifically, they've done a lot, not just in Pride, but also for the Black community as well. So when you think about those two things coming together, they've been there from well before, you know, these events of this year. They have been championing the cause and really putting themselves out there. Some really nice examples in Poland, for example, where they helped to create an AR arch, an AR rainbow, because all the rainbows that kept getting put out in the community were getting burned down, and so they created an AR arch so you couldn't burn it. It was persistent. It lived forever. It's an amazing creative, an amazing gesture, and it, you know, had ripple effect, lots of uptake across news media and so on. So tangible examples of brand that, you know, is walking the walk and talking the talk, as well as it's not just about changing a product name because it doesn't fit with, you know, societal norms right now. It's actually also about championing causes, going into those communities and providing solutions and offering support and assistance and just really being there. So for me, they are unbiasedly or biasedly, don't care, top of the list. So yeah.
Cool, that's great. And Polly, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think probably some brands that I think of when I started at Pride and everybody just literally wanted to come in for Pride season, and now it's really interesting to see brands go throughout the year. I think Transport for London does really well, and I think throughout the year they tend to put their Pride posters up, and there tends to be messaging continuously around the year. So I think they do a really good job. But I'd like to echo some of the points made earlier around I think every brand now sees it as an imperative, not just to engage their external staff, but also to work with their engage their internal staff. And I think what's been really heartening to me as well is to see brands not just getting on the back of advertising, but to get behind campaigns. So it's been great to see brands get behind things around trans, particularly recently, and to put their logo against saying, you know, we support the trans community, even though they know they're going to probably get some grief from it or some challenges on it. So I think it's great to see them get behind some of the policy changes that are happening, and not just from an advertising point of view. And I think for me, that's what gives them credibility. It isn't just about putting an advert about, it's being on all year round for your internal employees. So when you go into work, you feel supported, and it's supporting policy. So whether that's around the Gender Reform Act, or whether that's around supporting new initiatives like Trans Awareness Week, I think it's been great to see brands getting behind that. So in a kind of less obvious advertising way, but more in a human rights sense. I think that's been a really interesting thing that's developed certainly over the last couple of years.
And also, I think that one thing, you talked on Trans Awareness Week, you were involved in Lesbian Visibility Week, and you have brands involved in that. We also, there's also things like Bi Visibility next week. We're a broad spectrum, and there's a lot of things that brands can get involved with. It's not just the 1 month for Pride. I think that's the important thing. So we touched on some of the actionable things that brands can do. And I think education is a lot to do with it. So, in terms of what the steps they can take to find out more about what they can do, obviously, read the advertising guide. That's a great first thing. There's loads of resources out there. We have a podcast, which I host for advertising, and both Chris and Polly have been on it, and Deborah will get you on soon, I'm sure. There's lots of resources out there where you can go and listen to queer voices and hear their experiences. But if you have one action that you would like a brand to take, what would it be, Chris?
It's easy. Get these voices on the inside of your work walls. Go out and employ these people. I mean, stick your hand up if you identify as LGBTQ+. We're a fast-growing company, and it's because of these people sat behind me. Like, yes, I'm the gobby one that goes out and says we're the best, but actually, LGBTQ+ people have so much to offer a business, to push to a diversity of thought, just a different perspective, and bringing their world learnings together and helping to give, better creative, better media insight, better life insight. You get the same from Black, Asian, multi-ethnic people as well. But, going through, it's not, don't give the job to a straight person, give it to an LGBT person. Just go out and chuck that net out wide enough to that these people know you've got a job, and then make the inside, makes the workplace inclusive enough that they want to stay, and then watch the magic happen, quite literally. That's it for me.
Cool. Deborah, what's your one action?
Hold yourself and everybody accountable. Make sure that you're working with people, whether they are in your employ or whether you are outsourcing to them, or however you engage with them. Make sure that they are working to the same standards you are, and make sure your standards are high, and that you are enforcing a requirement to, as Chris said, widen the net, and just have people that don't think the same as you, that don't look the same as you, that don't act the same. Just have different people in your cohort so you can create much nicer voices, much nicer material. You can have much better media placement, much better creative assets. Like, open that wall to beyond just the standard, and then everybody you work with, make sure they are also doing that, and just hold everybody accountable. That would be my one thing, is just do the right thing.
Yeah. Polly?
I would say walk the talk and make sure that your policies that you have in your organisation are the right ones as well. I loved when Starbucks did an advert all around trans, but they made sure that that was backed up by saying they would pay for the transition of any staff. So I think all the points that we've heard about before, about making sure that you have the right people in place, and you are supportive of getting people from the LGBT community to work for you. But that doesn't happen unless they feel that the environment is right for them, and they will leave, or if they see you put an advert out, they will call you out on it if they don't feel that you're walking the talk internally. So I would say, before you go out there with an advert, have a look internally and say, do I have gender neutral toilets? Am I making it an inclusive workplace for someone that identifies as trans? And if you're not, be very wary about going out there and advertising, because the people, I always said this at Pride, the first people to shout you out is not the general public, it's your employees. They'll be the first people to say, this isn't what you believe in, because you're not putting it in place in the workplace.
Yeah, sure, that's great. We've got a couple of more minutes left, so I just want to, just two things I really want to touch on is that, sometimes we need sort of seismic shifts for things to happen, and certainly this year there's been so many that have created new ways of thinking. What shifts do we think needs to happen for all brands to get behind more inclusive advertising, and whether it's money or cultural things. And just on a positive note to end on, what would we like to see a brand do in this space in the next 12 months? Chris?
You always pick on me. What do we... it is shifting. The world is not the same place as it was 5 months ago. You know, we don't look at demographics the same. I've said it quite often. You know, 5 months ago, black bus driver was called low skilled. Indian lady in Tesco's was called low paid. Now they're called key workers. Government calls them key workers. Brands call them key workers. We call them key workers. We clapped on a Thursday, you know, and that is also now spilling out into Black lives, LGBTQ plus. We're all looking, you know, at ourselves. So a lot of these movements that are happening now have happened before. They happened, you know, Black Lives Matter happened 4 years ago. You know, the persecution of LGBT people has been happening a lot, you know, certainly in my 38 years on earth. But now people, allies, are becoming advocates, and, you know, then they're not just saying, yeah, no, I quietly support you. Now, you know, you go on these marches and there's many people that look like you, Joanne, as there is that look like me on a Black Lives Matter march. And there's just as many LGBTQ plus people in that march as well, saying you marched with us last year, we're going to march with you this year, you know. So I think that change has happened. It really has. It's happened. It's happening. Let's just keep up the momentum now. You know,
yeah, I think, yeah, that's great. And Deborah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think similarly, keep up the momentum. I think anything you started, especially if you started it as a knee-jerk reaction to recent events or anything that you're doing behind LGBTQ, like really mean it and stick with it. And it's not, you know, it's like a dog. It's not just for Christmas. It's for life, right?
Exactly.
So you have to just, you know, be 100% committed, and stick with it. And it's gonna be bumpy road, because there's going to be fallout. There will be people that don't agree with you and that may not want to buy your brand. But I think Nike is a good example of, you know, through all the backlash, through all of the agitation, they just stick with it. And they're sure of who they are. So that would be my advice. Just ride the wave.
And Polly?
I think don't always use the usual candidates. So think about butch women, think about people with disabilities who are also gay. I think sometimes it can feel a bit stereotypical when you see some of the ads and you think, well, that's what everybody thinks I look like, and that's not what I look like. So I think be brave and try and think about intersectionality, try and think about putting out different images of people, which is a brave thing to do. But I think for the brands that start doing that, they'll get the positive feedback. That's what I'd like to see, a bit more bravery around some of the people that are shown, rather than just the usual kind of stereotypical LGBT imagery that gets used.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to have to wrap it up there, I'm afraid, but that's fantastic. If anyone has any questions around this subject, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and we'll hopefully pick them up in the after party. If anyone fancies delving deeper into this subject, and when you've got a bit of a fuzzy head tomorrow morning, please get on the Outvertising podcast on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get podcasts, and you can listen to lots of LGBTQ plus stories on there. So thanks very much, Chris, Deborah, and Polly. That's been fantastic. I'm Joanne Oatts, and I think I'm handing back to Jerry now.